ওকে, সোমনাথ দা ইউটিউবে অন করে দাও লাইভ স্ট্রিমিং। ওকে, good afternoon all. I am Jyotirmoy Shil from the Department of English, Malda College. On behalf of the Department of English, I welcome you to this fourth lecture of webinar and special lecture series 2021. As you already know that today's lecture will be delivered by Dr. Mahitosh Mandal, Assistant Professor and Head in the Department of English, Presidency University, Kolkata. Dr. Mahitosh Mandal received his BA, MA, MPhil, and PhD from the Department of English, Jadavpur University, Kolkata. His MPhil thesis was on how the Lacanian notion of sexual non-rapport figures in the novels of British postmodernist author John Fowles. Dr. Mahitosh Mandal's doctoral thesis was on biblical narrative. Apart from teaching at Presidency University, he served as guest lecturer at Ramakrishna Mission Residential College, Autonomous Narendrapur, and University of Calcutta. His research interests include psychoanalytic theory, cultural studies, colonial Bengal, and Dalit literature. He has presented his research findings in several national and international conferences, including the conferences organized by the University of London, Ghent University, and Buckbeak College, London. His research articles have been published in several national and international journals. His book, Ja Laka, From Clinic to Culture, published by Orient Black Swan, has been critically acclaimed in international academia. Today, Dr. Mahitosh Mandal would be speaking on why Hamlet is a tragedy of desire. A very warm welcome, sir. Now it is over to you, sir.
Yes, Jyotirmoy, thank you very
Sir.
much for the introduction. Just a second. So what I intend to, first I would like to thank the Department of English, Malda College, for inviting me here to give the talk today. Particularly thanks to Jyotirmoy for getting in touch with me after such a long time. And I remember having taught him at Ramakrishna Mission long back, seems like ages back. I'm very glad that he's now the head of the department in Malda College, English department. That's wonderful. And also my sincere thanks to all the faculty members in the Department of English, Malda College, for hosting me today. Also sincere thanks to the principal of Malda College for allowing this to happen. So thanks to all of you, and I hope that you enjoy what I discussed today. There is a possibility that I might say things which might not make sense, but that's how it is always. You always misunderstand things and so on and so forth. So yeah, but as the title of the talk, why Hamlet is a tragedy of desire, I would get straight into the discussion, and then if there are questions at the end of the talk, we can address. So I would begin straight in terms of discussing the title, which is apparently a simple title, why Hamlet is a tragedy of desire. But you would realize, as I discuss in course of the lecture, you'd realize that it is not that simple. It is a deceptively simple title in the sense that it assumes a particular reading of Hamlet to be correct, and some other readings to be somewhat problematic, somewhat incorrect. When I say why Hamlet is a tragedy of desire, I basically imply that I am accepting the statement that Hamlet is a tragedy of desire. That Hamlet is a tragedy of desire. And this can be a problematic statement. Not many in the academic world would perhaps immediately accept this claim this almost like a singular summarization of the text as the tragedy of desire. So Hamlet as a tragedy of Hamlet is a tragedy of desire. If that is what I mean, then it can be a problematic statement. Because what about Hamlet being a revenge tragedy, for example? So when I say Hamlet is a tragedy of desire, do I question the idea that Hamlet is a revenge tragedy? So therefore, the title is not a simple kind of a title. And I claim that there are at least three implications or three problems in the existing Hamlet scholarship that this title, Why Hamlet is a Tragedy of Desire, poses or exposes, if you like. The first implication of the title, Hamlet is a Tragedy of Desire, is to question the existing readings which consider Hamlet as a revenge tragedy. It is a commonplace in academic readings of Hamlet that after a revenge tragedy involving Hamlet's attempt to avenge the murder of his father, Senior Hamlet. So Senior Hamlet was, as all of you know, killed, murdered by Claudius, his brother, and he had to be avenged. So it is Hamlet, the son, who discovers, not at the beginning of the play, but after at least 3 acts have passed, in Act 1, Scene 4, Hamlet discovers that his father has been murdered when the ghost appears. So not at the initial acts. Hamlet doesn't, when Hamlet appears in the play, he doesn't really know that his father has been killed. So the point I'm trying to make is this, that the conventional reading is that Hamlet's entire trajectory in the text of Hamlet is about his attempt to take revenge vis-a-vis the murder of his father, and that he is unable to take the revenge, and the play goes on and on and on until unless at the end of the play, Act 5, Scene 2, Hamlet finally, after a long delay, kills Claudius. It is considered to be a revenge tragedy. But I would claim in course of today's discussion that it is not a revenge tragedy, precisely because Hamlet's suffering, Hamlet's existential crisis, Hamlet's paralysis, psychological paralysis, does not begin after he discovers that his father has been murdered, but before that discovery. So before Hamlet discovers that his father has been murdered, he discovers something else. He finds that his mother has remarried quickly. That immediately after the death of his father, murder of his father, his mother has got married to his uncle without mourning, without devoting enough time to digest this tragedy, this event, this loss, cope with this loss. She has immediately got married to Claudius. So the tragedy of Hamlet, I would claim in course of the discussion, is not really related to the murder of the father, but this over hasty remarriage of the mother. That the mother remarries quickly without giving time to mourn the death of the husband, etc., etc. And Hamlet is paralyzed by this enigmatic, this uncontrollable, insatiable sexual desire that he apparently encounters in the figure of his mother, Gertrude. So I would demonstrate in course of today's discussion that Hamlet is more of a tragedy deriving from this encounter with the desire of the mother than an encounter with the murder of the father. So the conventional reading, which considers Hamlet to be a revenge tragedy, focuses on the murder of the father. And this reading, which is a thing that I'm going to offer, would basically focus on the mother, the marriage of the mother, or the remarriage of the mother, or the over hasty remarriage of the mother. The first implication of the title, Why Hamlet is a Tragedy of Desire. The second implication would be, once again, questioning another existing reading, which is particularly promoted by T.S. Eliot in his famous essay, Hamlet and His Problems. as all of you know, Eliot criticizes Shakespeare. Eliot claims that Hamlet is an artistic failure. He says that among all the plays by Shakespeare, Hamlet is an artistic failure, and that Shakespeare was dealing with the subject, Hamlet, with an outburst of emotion, Hamlet's outburst of emotion, soliloquy, etc., which didn't have, as Eliot said famously, as all of you know, didn't have an objective correlative. Meaning, Hamlet was shown to express an excess of emotion, to be or not to be, that is the question, etc. But these existential reflections, these philosophical reflections, these emotional outbursts, according to Eliot, didn't have any real life, factual, historical, textual reason, object, situation, circumstance corresponding to the emotion. So it was an emotion without a cause, without an object, without a situation causing that emotion. Therefore, Hamlet's outburst of emotion, according to Eliot, is an outburst of emotion, exaggeration, etc. It doesn't have any objective correlative, and because it doesn't have any objective correlative, doesn't have any equivalent, the emotion doesn't have an equivalent in reality. It is because of that Shakespeare, couldn't deal well with the character development of Hamlet. That Hamlet was unnecessarily, without any substantial reason, engaging with philosophical reflections, emotional outbursts, speculations which are far beyond what actually happened in his life. So he comes back from Wittenberg to Denmark. He finds his mother getting remarried, and later on discovers through the ghost that his father was killed, etc. These are not enough reasons, according to T.S. Eliot, for Hamlet to engage in these existential philosophical reflections on life and death, etc. Too much away from the data available in the text. So second conventional reading, and very much glorified, T.S. Eliot is a very much glorified critic, as all of you know. According to Eliot, Hamlet is an artistic failure because Hamlet's emotions do not have any objective correlative, an object in reality. But this reading that I'm going to offer today would question that and would dismiss this reading of Eliot. And it would show that Hamlet, at least I hope I can show it because of the time constraint, the fact that Eliot is somewhat mistaken here, because Hamlet's emotional dilemma, speculations, etc., philosophical speculations about life, about death, about existence, etc., meaninglessness of existence, all these are deeply rooted, as I would argue, in the encounter once again with the question of desire on multiple levels, not only the desire of the mother or desire, the sexual appetite of the mother, but also on other levels. So the emotional outbursts, these speculations about life and death, existential crisis, etc., do have some roots in Hamlet's unconscious thinking, unconscious mind, etc. So second reading, conventional reading, that Hamlet is an artistic failure and doesn't have objective correlative, could be questioned in terms of a reading that describes Hamlet as a tragedy of desire. The third conventional reading that would be questioned in today's lecture is the reading that Hamlet suffers from procrastination. Everybody knows, whenever we procrastinate in life, we say, okay, I'm procrastinating like Hamlet, to be or not to be, and to do or not to do, to act or not to act. This is a common modern problem which seems to be rooted in Hamlet's dilemma. Now, the question here is, of course, to debate, to even discard this theory of procrastination. Because if you read Hamlet's, if you read the play very closely, a very close textual reading would give the impression directly that there are many occasions, several occasions, where Hamlet acts very fast. He doesn't hesitate. He doesn't procrastinate. He doesn't delay, but he acts very quickly, very fast. Let me give you a few examples. Those who have read the play would immediately remember. One of the earliest, one of the major examples would be Hamlet murdering Polonius in the closet scene in Act 3, where, I think Act 3, Scene 2 perhaps, where Hamlet is talking to Gertrude, his mother, actually confronting Gertrude about her crime, quote unquote crime. We don't know whether Gertrude was a party to the murder of King Hamlet, but Hamlet thinks that Gertrude has committed a crime. So he confronts Gertrude in the closet of Gertrude, in Gertrude's room. And behind the tapestry, Polonius was hiding to hear what Hamlet was talking about to Gertrude. And at that point, as you remember, Hamlet gets excited, threatens his mother, etc. And then Polonius thinks that Gertrude is being killed. So he moves from behind the tapestry, and Hamlet, without a hesitation, without a doubt, without a single moment's delay, pushes the sword across the tapestry and kills the man behind the tapestry, which happens to be Polonius. Of course, Hamlet thought it is Claudius. That's a different issue. But at that point, Hamlet does not hesitate. Hamlet acts very fast. Hamlet does not procrastinate. Let me give you 2-3 more examples. If you remember that particular occasion when Hamlet is being sent to England, because Claudius is suspicious that Hamlet has got to know about the murder of his brother, that Claudius has murdered King Hamlet. Claudius suspects that Hamlet knows the truth. Therefore, he decides to send Hamlet to England. And with a letter, which his friends, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, are carrying, with a letter which contains the order to kill Hamlet. So when Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and Hamlet go to the court of the King of England, the King of England will read the letter. The letter has the instruction that Hamlet has to be killed, and the king would immediately order the death sentence for Hamlet. On the way to England, Hamlet, however, discovers the letter that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are carrying, and he reads the letter, finds that the letter says that Hamlet has to be killed. Then what he does very quickly, without a hesitation, he writes another letter. And in that letter, he mentions the names of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. And he takes away the original letter and replaces it with the second letter. And Ross and Gill, as you know, they could go to England. And the moment the King of England reads the letter, he kills, he eventually uses his people to kill Ross and Gill. That's why you have the play Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Dead by Tom Stoppard. Very interesting play, but I won't get into that. But what I'm saying is that Hamlet, without a moment thought, without hesitation, without delay, without procrastination, seals the fate of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern in a second. He exchanges the letter. This act of exchanging the letter does not involve procrastination. Let me give you a third example that Hamlet does not procrastinate. If you think about the moment when the courtier, Osric, at the end of the play, I think Act 5, Scene 1, perhaps, where Osric comes to Hamlet. Hamlet and Horatio are talking. Osric comes and talks to Hamlet and tells Hamlet that he should, that Claudius has arranged a combat, a fencing match between Hamlet and Laertes, the brother of Ophelia, the son of Polonius. And Osric says that Claudius wants Prince Hamlet to fight on behalf of Claudius. And of course, Hamlet understands that Claudius is planning something, conspiring something to kill him. But what Hamlet does immediately is that he agrees, without a second thought, he agrees to fight Laertes, a fight that would be a fatal fight for him, a fight that would cost his life. And Hamlet already knows that Claudius is planning to kill him. But Hamlet does not hesitate at that point of time. As a matter of fact, if you read Act 5, Scene 1 closely, you would realize that Horatio is asking Hamlet not to go for this fencing match. But Hamlet doesn't listen to Horatio, his friend. Hamlet immediately agrees to it. Immediately agrees being the operative phrase. Hamlet does not procrastinate, doesn't hesitate. Hamlet hastes. Hamlet quickens. Hamlet speeds up, doesn't delay. There is no procrastination in his agreement to fight Laertes, which would actually be, as I said, a fatal fight for him. So we can actually give many examples from the text. I just give you 3 examples. There are many examples. For example, his murder of Claudius at the end of the play. Very quickly, the moment he finds that Claudius has poisoned his mother, Gertrude, he goes and kills, etc. But what I'm saying is that there are several examples in the play which that Hamlet does not always procrastinate. That Hamlet acts quickly at many occasions. And the interesting point here is this, that Hamlet is, if you look at the play very closely, Hamlet is actually looking for the right moment. He waits for the right moment. When he finds Claudius praying to the gods, confessing to the gods that he has committed crime, Hamlet finds that, but Hamlet doesn't kill Claudius at that moment, because Hamlet thinks, if I kill Claudius while Claudius is praying to the gods, it will not be the exact revenge. I want to kill Claudius before Claudius has a chance to confession. Because that's how King Hamlet was killed, as you remember. King Hamlet was sleeping in the garden, and then Claudius apparently went there and poured poison into his ear. Therefore, King Hamlet didn't have the opportunity, didn't have the time, the chance to confess before death. People do not confess before death, confess your sins before death. Catholic argument, you would be wandering on earth. You would be in a limbo. You would neither go to heaven or hell or stay back in earth, but somewhere in between. That's why the ghost wanders the earth. So Hamlet wants to come up with an exact revenge on Claudius. So he realizes, I would kill Claudius not when Claudius is praying to the gods, but when Claudius is caught committing a crime or committing adultery, because Hamlet thinks that Claudius has always forced Gertrude to cheat on senior Hamlet. So he wants to catch Claudius red-handed and kill him at the moment of Claudius's crime. The point being, if Hamlet hesitates, if Hamlet delays certain acts, it is not because he's suffering from this extreme melancholy and totally obsessed, paralyzed, but because he's looking for the right time. And therefore, there are many points when Hamlet acts very quickly, and there are many points when Hamlet delays. And I could theorize this further, taking points from Lacan, but I won't do that. I'm just deliberately avoiding including here psychoanalytic theories per se. But of course, my reading is Lacanian overall. So the third, therefore, reading that we know about Hamlet is that Hamlet procrastinates. I would be questioned if you look into the play from a perspective that tries to establish that Hamlet is a tragedy of desire and not a tragedy of, and not a revenge tragedy for the matter. So it is not procrastination. It has, Hamlet is, if you allow me to use this idea, Hamlet is suspended in the time of the other, and so on and so forth. But I won't get into that now, just to keep things simple. So just to summarize what I said till now, is that if you look at Hamlet as a tragedy of desire, it would help us question 3 existing forms of reading. 1, the reading of Hamlet as a revenge tragedy. 2, the reading of Hamlet as an artistic failure, where Hamlet doesn't have an objective correlate. And 3, a reading of Hamlet that involves the idea that Hamlet suffers from procrastination. Am I making sense? I know I'm speaking a bit fast because of time, but am I making sense?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So now up to the next part of the discussion, when I would try and understand the notion of desire. When I say that Hamlet is a tragedy of desire, what do I mean by it? It involves that we define, at least to some extent, if not exhaustively, what desire means. Now, at least at 2-3 levels, we can define desire for the purpose of our argument in today's discussion. One would be that desire, and as you know, in French, D, it basically means of and not for all the time. So the point I'm trying to make here is this, that desire is conventionally, in a Freudian sense, understood to be desire for something. Desire for something. I desire this person in life. I desire that particular career option in life, and so on and so forth. Desire for something or somebody. This is the conventional understanding of desire. This is also a typical Freudian understanding of desire, Freudian, where Oedipus complex is understood as a triangle where the child desires the mother, the father desires the mother, the child therefore considers the father to be a rival and therefore wants to kill the father. The murderous wish is directed to the father, and the desire to get the mother excels. This is a typical classical Freudian reading, which has its problems that I would highlight, which is that it is it is not so much about the child desiring the mother. At the Oedipal moment, as Lacan clarifies, at the Oedipal moment, it is not so much a question of the child desiring the mother, but it is more of a question for the child to be the object of mother's desire. You see this problematic here. The child doesn't want the mother. The child wants the mother to want him or her. So the child wants to convert himself or herself into an object of mother's desire. Why? Because all children want one thing, more or less, which is to remain one with the mother, to not get away from the mother-child dyad, because that would be risky. For the human offspring, unlike an animal offspring, for the human offspring is born helpless, cannot walk, cannot stand up, born immature, if you like, always. Unlike other animals speak, like birds there are birds which give birth in the sky, and even before the egg breaks, before it drops on the ground, and the baby bird flies. If you think about different kind of animal kind of offsprings, you realize that they are born very mature. Even after immediately after they are born, they start walking, running, etc., etc. But human offsprings are by default, for some unfortunate divine reason, they are by default a kind of helpless. They're born helpless, if you like. And therefore, what the child always desires is to remain one with the mother, to be always with the mother. So leaving the mother's fold, leaving the mother's care, leaving the mother's companionship is the biggest critical moment, biggest crisis in the life of a child. It can for the child. Therefore, what the child always wants is to be one with the mother. The child has been physiologically one with the mother before the birth. Even after the birth, in terms of being close to the mother, physiologically, and then even psychologically, the child thinks that he or she and his or her mother is one. Like Jesus Christ said, "I and my Father are one." The child thinks that I and my mother are one. This oneness is always, challenged, and this challenge happens when Oedipus complex, like it happens at the biggest level. It happens earlier as well, at the level of intuition complex, the birth of siblings, etc. But it happens at the biggest level when the child discovers that the mother obeys the father, or the mother spends more time with people other than the child. What the child wants is that the mother should be with me, should give me absolute attention. What is love? Love is, in the fundamental sense, this absolutely baseless demand that the companion should be with me for the entirety of his or her time. Absolute unconditional attention, complete attention from the mother is what the child wants. Now, of course, the mother has other business to do. Doesn't always spend time with the child. Goes away, for other works. Spends time with the father, with other people, etc., etc. And the child has problems accepting it. But eventually, in the fantasy of the child, it so happens, it so occurs, she realizes that the mother is somebody who is away from me, because mother has other interests. Of course, it can, and the child cannot understand. What the child wants is to be to fulfill every demand of the mother. Whatever my mother want, if I can be that, then my mother would be with me. Like definitely my mother, goes for these and that, X and Y and A B, C, D, to this person, to that person, etc., etc. What if I can fulfill everything that my mother demands or desires, and I can be then with the mother all the time? Therefore, the child at the Oedipal moment is troubled not by a desire for the mother, but by the question, what does my mother want? Can I be everything that my mother wants? If I can be, then I can be with the mother forever. Therefore, the question here is not desire for mother. The question here is desire of the mother. What does my mother want? And this is a typical situation that happens in Hamlet. Hamlet is paralyzed, baffled, unsettled, confused vis-a-vis the desire of the mother, desire of Gertrude. I'll get into that later on. But this is the first implication of the desire that you can locate in the play of Shakespeare's, which is Hamlet. The second implication of desire, second concept of desire that you could locate in Hamlet is the idea that desire is always a desire for a lack. It's the pun on the English word want, if you like. I want what I want. Want means desire, and want also means lack. So, I'm wanting in certain respects. It means I'm lacking in certain respects. I want what I want basically means I desire what I lack. And I'm actually indebted to my professor, Dr. Shantanu at Jadavpur University, who actually introduced us to Lakhon at a very serious level, and suddenly reminded of his views on Lakhon and Hamlet. But never mind. Just to get back to what I'm saying is that I want what I want. Desire always functions with reference to a lack. I desire something that is that I cannot get. Desire sustains itself as long as the object is lacking. Desire is always a desire for the impossible object. The object that I cannot get is what triggers my desire. Multiple examples can be given, but I am not getting into that. Desire is always a desire for a lack. Demand can be fulfilled, need can be fulfilled, but desire cannot be fulfilled. Desire is always, and if you like, desire is also about the desire to be recognized, desire for the recognition of one's desire, as Zizek put it. What do I desire? I don't desire this and that. I desire that my desire be recognized. Okay, so and you can find multiple examples. I mean, people keep writing poetry. Think about Dante. Think about Petrarch. Dante's Laura. Petrarch's Laura, and so on. Thank you. So, if you think about Petrarch and Dante writing sonnets, etc., etc., and poetry comes as this articulation of desire when the object is not available. So, Petrarch kept on writing and writing because Laura was never available in his life. And similarly, if you think about Dante's desire for Beatrice, which was articulated through poetry, he kept on writing poetry because the object of love was not available, was not accessible. So that which is not accessible is what causes our desire, or to be more precise, that which is not accessible is what we desire. Okay, so desire is in a tragic way linked to the impossibility of fulfillment of desire. Desire is the desire for the impossible, if you like. And the third implication of desire that would be, and you would find this particular proposition that desire is the desire for the impossible with reference to Hamlet's love for Ophelia, Hamlet's desire for Ophelia. And I'll explain that if you have time. Third implication of desire in this context is the third conceptual idea that we can take here to read Hamlet would be the idea that desire is desire of the other. The desire is desire of the other. What does it mean? It means that whenever we desire something, The question is not what we desire. The question is, how do we know that it is our desire? So if I can give a personal example, or an example from a friend's life, that he always wanted to study English honors, because he found in his village that whoever studied English honors got a job through School Service Commission, got a job in a school, and he eventually started emulating these people. So he started thinking that, yes, I would study English honors, then I would get a job in a school, then I would get married and have family, etc. All these details. So and he also found that those who are studying English are getting jobs, and they are being respected in society. So this particular child or adolescent schoolboy, he started emulating the desire of the other, that they have become school teachers studying English honors. I would also become school teachers like them. So this desire to be the school teacher, desire to have this particular career option as one's choice, is not actually that subject's choice. It is the choice which is an emulated, a mimetic choice, which means that somebody wants an object because someone else has also wanted that object. It also happens in love relationships, or the idea of beauty. You would find that this particular man or woman is very attractive for certain section of people, and then those people are emulated by others. So he loves X because the other person loves X, etc. So our desire is usually functional in terms of mimesis, in terms of an emulation. I desired this because I found someone else desiring this, and therefore I'm emulating that desire. So my desire is not my desire, it is someone else's desire. It is almost always almost the case that what we desire, like you want to be a poet, but you are actually emulating someone else's desire to be a poet. Someone else becomes successful and so on and so forth, so you also wanted to be like her. You and she are not same, but you think you are same. This is what Locke defined as the mirror image, as the ideal ego, that we always emulate someone else. And when you emulate, in the process of emulation, you lose yourself. Okay, so your desire is not your desire, it is someone else's desire. And Slavoj Žižek put it very precisely. He said, the question is not what we desire. The question is, how do we know that what we desire, how do we know that our desire is our desire? The question is not what we desire. The question is, how do we know that our desire is our desire? How do I know this is my desire? What if it is my mother's desire that I'm trying to fulfill? What if it is my father's desire? It is my brother's desire. It is my friend's desire. It is a desire that I'm emulating vis-a-vis a teacher. My teacher did this, so I'm doing this. So this is a terrible question. And this particular notion, and this is what leads to tragedy. Because when you follow someone else's desire and not your desire, you experience moments of disappointment, frustration, disillusionment, encounter with the real, encounter with the void, encounter with anxiety, etc., etc. So basically, the task of psychoanalysis posits itself as having is the task to let the analysand, the subject, know what he or she desires and what society wants him or her to desire. So when I say desire is the desire of the other, I do not only mean that desire of someone else, one individual that you know, but it might also mean desire of society. Society wants you to desire certain things. Society doesn't allow you, for example, in the conventional society, it is not allowed to fulfill your sexual urges before marriage. So society controls your desire, how you desire, what you desire. Society controls your desire. Society is, as Lacan would call it, the big other with the uppercase O, other. So desire is the desire of the other. It also therefore means that desire is the desire shaped by society, determined by society, created by society, controlled by, regulated by society. That is also desire is the desire of the other. But in the particular case of Hamlet, we would realize how Hamlet's desire to do certain things, to love Ophelia or to kill Claudius, would fundamentally be inspired, emulated, triggered by certain actions of Laertes. Laertes is Ophelia's brother, as I said, and Polonius's son, as all of you know. So these are the three aspects of desire, and you can come up with many more aspects and locate them in the text. But these are the three basic aspects of desire. Desire as the desire of the mother, and not desire for the mother. Desire as the desire for the impossible, and the desire as the desire of the other. These three implications of desire are totally locatable within the context of Hamlet. And if you locate these ideas in the text, you would be able to understand why I say. And when I say, I am not saying this alone. There are Lacanian psychoanalytic critics who have also argued on this line, because Lacan delivered an entire, like, almost 8 lectures on Hamlet and desire. So he discussed it. Very difficult to read and understand, never mind. But what I'm saying is that if you try and understand the text of Hamlet, read the text of Hamlet very closely, you realize that the three aspects of desire are totally locatable. They are there, waiting for you to discover them. And you realize that Hamlet is not a revenge tragedy, perhaps, or Hamlet is not suffering from a lack of an objective correlative, or that Hamlet is not suffering from procrastination, but that Hamlet is basically suffering from this tragedy triggered by desire at 3 levels. Okay, so that's the second part of my discussion. Up to this, it is clear. Is it clear?
Sir, you're explaining beautifully.
Thank you, Jyotirmoy. Okay. So now, of course, what remains for me is describe with close textual reference what Hamlet is actually doing, or how these 3 levels of desire are locatable within the text of Hamlet, within the behaviors of Hamlet. I don't have much time, of course, and I don't intend to read the texts very closely. I don't have time. I can give many examples, but I can't help giving you only at least 1 or 2 examples from the text. So for that, you have to give me a second, because I will be presenting from the text of Hamlet, which is the Arden edition. Those of you who are studying Hamlet or would be studying Hamlet, please, for the students, please consult the Arden edition of Hamlet. So yeah, just a second. Yeah. So let me when I find. Let me go to Act 1, Scene 2 of Hamlet, which is the what happened? Oh, just a second. It should be here. You must read the text in order to make sense of what I'm saying. Otherwise, it will be difficult. Everything I'm saying is absolutely supported by the text. So, but of course, I can't establish it in a lecture like this. I would have needed more lectures, but never mind. I would draw your attention to this particular passage in Act 1, Scene 2 of Hamlet, where Hamlet is absolutely suicidal. You know that in Act 3 of the text, you have the famous speech by Hamlet, where Hamlet, I'll give you the exact location, which is Act 3, Scene 1. Everybody knows this speech, to be or not to be. To be or not to be happens in Act 3, Scene 1 at the middle of the play. It is considered to be the moment in the play, the key moment in the play. Hamlet is suicidal. Hamlet thinks that to be or not to be, meaning, do I survive without taking revenge, or do I take revenge and therefore be incriminated and therefore die, etc., etc., and so on and so forth. Do I live on suffering the problems of life, or do I, take arms against a sea of troubles, and so on and so forth. That's the brilliant speech which is glorified for absolutely justifiable reasons across canonical literature criticism. But my point is that that is not the only place where Hamlet has existential crisis. Critics have categorically, almost inevitably, consistently forgotten, ignored that at another point, Hamlet has suicidal thoughts, suicidal wishes, and not, and this point is not after he discovers that his father has been murdered, but before that. You can always say that to be or not to be justified, Hamlet's question of taking revenge or not, insofar as Hamlet has got to know that his father has been killed by Claudius, revenge has to be taken. But to take the revenge is to kill somebody. It might incriminate him, and many other things might happen, etc., etc. Life is full of problems. Look at how my father died. Look how Gertrude betrayed my father, etc., etc. So I would rather die, etc. But the point is this: to be or not to be can be justified as a product of Hamlet's inability to take revenge, or Hamlet's dilemma regarding taking revenge. But what explains this particular passage in Act 1, Scene 2, where Hamlet has an identical set of reflections on, almost identical set of reflections on suicide, on the meaninglessness of existence? Hamlet doesn't know about the murder of the father. Then why is Hamlet speaking like this? Let us read this text, this passage very closely. I think it is the only passage I would be able to read out today. A very important passage from Hamlet, Act 1, Scene 2. Hamlet discovers, I repeat, that his father has been murdered. The ghost tells him in Act 1, Scene 4, and not in Act 1, Scene 2. But still in Act 1, Scene 2, Hamlet is already suffering. Hamlet is already paralyzed. Hamlet says, "Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew." Or that the evil, can you see this?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
The screen is visible.
Yeah. Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew. Or that the everlasting had not fixed his canon against self-slaughter. Oh God, God, how very still, flat, and unprofitable seem to me all the uses of this world. Fie on it. Fie, 'tis an unweeded garden that grows to seed. Things rank and gross in nature, poses it merely, that it should come thus. But 2 months dead, nay, not so much, not two, so excellent a king, that was to this Hyperion, to a satyr. So loving to my mother, that he might not beteem the winds of heaven, visit her face too roughly, heaven and earth. Must I remember? Why she should hang on him as if increase of appetite had grown by what it fed on. And yet, within a month, let me not think on it, frailty, thy name is omen. A little month, or ere those shoes were old, with which she followed my poor father's body, like Naomi, all tears. Why she, oh God, a beast that once discourse of reason would have mourned longer, married with my uncle, my father's brother, but no more like my father than I to Hercules. Within a month, ere yet the salt of most unrighteous left the flashing in her gold eyes, she married. Oh, most wicked speech! To post with such dexterity to incestuous shits, it is not, nor it cannot come to good. But break my heart, for I must hold my tongue. If you have listened to this, read this with me very closely, you would realize this is an interesting soliloquy by Hamlet, and it is an interesting, if you like, this could, in my understanding, be the key to the entire enigma, the textual, thematic enigma of the play Hamlet. Because this seems to open up a lot of possibilities. Let us read it and explain. I just read it to give you the idea. Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw and resolve itself into a dew, or that the everlasting had not fixed his canon against self-slaughter. Oh, that this too solid flesh, actually solid flesh, that this solid flesh, this flesh of ours, would eventually melt, thaw, and dissolve into a dew from dust to dust. So we would die eventually. All of us would die. Then why bother living? Or that the everlasting had not fixed his canon against self-slaughter. God, in Catholic Christianity, is against suicide. Self-slaughter is suicide. So there is a divine law against suicide. It is particularly commandment, fifth commandment, thou shalt not kill. I think it's fifth, yeah. So the everlasting had not fixed his canon against self-slaughter. So it is because there is a divine law against suicide. That's why probably we live. Otherwise, there is no point in living. Because everybody comes from dust, and everybody has a trajectory from dust to dust. Oh, God, God. And you understand that Hamlet is typically a divine believer. He believes in God. He's a believer. Hamlet is not Albert Camus. Hamlet is not Nietzsche. Hamlet believes in God. That's what makes it a different kind of an existentialistic life. Oh God, God. How very stale, flat, and unprofitable seem to me all the uses of this. Uses means activities. Usefulness, activities of the world. How all the activities, all the usefulness, all the meanings of the world appear to me to be unprofitable. Life, to put it bluntly, Hamlet says that life is meaningless. To live like this is meaningless. As I said, it is a similar kind of speech as you find out in To Be or Not To Be, but it happens much earlier. The question is, why is it? Why is it that Hamlet contemplates suicide, talks about the meaninglessness of existence at this point? What triggers Hamlet's suicidal thoughts, Hamlet's suffering? What is the cause of Hamlet's suffering at this point? You read on and you discover the key to his suffering. Fie on it, etc., etc. It goes on. Then he says that it should come thus. But 2 months dead, nay, not so much, not too so excellent a king that was to this Hyperion, to a satyr, so loving to my mother. So my father has died only, it's been 2 months. And within 2 months, my mother, without proper mourning, without giving time to forget my dead father, has got married to my uncle. And who is this uncle? The father is like Hyperion, the god. And the uncle is like Satyr, the half animal, half goat, half human kind of a demonic, beastly entity. So my father was divine, godlike, and my uncle is beastly. And my father and my mother didn't take a single moment to switch from my father, who just died, to my uncle, who is condemnable. So loving to my mother that he might not between the wings of heaven visit her face too roughly. My father loved my mother so much that he wouldn't even allow the winds of heaven, would try to protect my mother from storm, from climate, from bad weather, from everything that is bad, metaphorically. How my father cared for my mother, how my father loved my mother, and this mother, immediately after the death of my father, has got remarried. Heaven and earth must remember. Why? She should hang on him as if increase of appetite had grown by what it fed on. Appetite. Absolutely straightforward reference to sexual appetite of the mother. Why she should hang on him as if increase of appetite had grown by what it fed on. So my mother's sexual appetite increased the more my father apparently satisfied her sexually. So for Hamlet, as long as my father was alive, my mother was always with my father, always loving him or pretending to love him, because as if he satisfied her sexual desire. And yet within a month, let me not think on it, frailty thy name is woman, a little month over or ere those shoes were old, with which she followed my poor father's body, like none of the all tears. So he says, frailty thy name is omen. What kind of betrayal my mother is manifesting? That she doesn't like, she acted like she loved him so much, and now she didn't take a single moment, didn't take a long time to get married to my uncle. A little month of, or ever those shoes were old with which she followed my poor father's body. So my whatever shoes my mother was wearing when she went to the funeral of my father, even before those shoes became old, she got into bed with Claudius. So for Hamlet, the problem therefore is the problem of the mother's sexual desire, mother's desire to be more precise. What is it? Because Hamlet's mother should be quite old at this point of time. According to the critics, she would be in her late 30s or early 40s. So for Hamlet, this is unnatural for somebody like her to have so much, which is of course Hamlet's interpretation, misogynistic interpretation. Shakespeare doesn't approve of it, or we don't approve of it. But for Hamlet, this is this absolutely problematic, unsettling sexual desire of the mother is what troubles him at this point of time. Why she, a beast that once discourse of reason, would have mourned longer. My mother is worse than a beast, because when they lose their near and dear ones, they mourn. But my mother, even though a human being with rational faculty, even she didn't mourn. She's worse than my father. She's worse than the animals. And precisely, and this disgust towards his mother, this disgust towards his feminine, towards her femininity, towards her sexuality, sexual desire is what, and I can give you examples after examples from the text, but I don't have time, is what is key to Hamlet's sense of paralysis, sense of dilemma throughout the play. That he is paralyzed because he is stuck with the desire of the mother. He can't get away from these thoughts regarding what does the mother want, what kind of desire does my mother have. Would have mourned longer, married with my uncle, my father's brother, but no more like my father than I to Hercules. Within a month, year, and how he's repeating repeatedly at this particular context, how he's repeating that in using various phrases and various words, this problem, that singular problem that seems to be bothering him, is how could my mother remarry my uncle? This is number one, when she loved my father so much. Second, how could my mother remarry my uncle so quickly, over hasty remarriage, so quickly? So how can I trust my mother? Can I trust women in general? That's what Hamlet says. If women can switch from one partner to another, do not have any kind of any moment of thought, any hesitation in doing so. So Hamlet therefore asks the question, when he says frailty thy name is woman, he talks about these betrayals, this ability for women to cheat and to forget their love, forget the love that love from others, and so on and so forth. So this particular context, he goes on, had left flashing in her gold eyes, she married. Oh, most wicked speed to post with such dexterity to incestuous ships. It is not, nor it cannot come to good. So she says that, he says that, of course, my mother has gone back to incestuous hits, meaning with my uncle. This is incest. I cannot allow this, and so on and so forth. I'll stop sharing here because it's already 7, and I of course have to explain other stuff. I'll take probably 10 more minutes to discuss whatever I have to say. So what I'm saying is, yeah. So what I'm trying to say here is this: that this is one example, and from many examples from across the text. As you can understand, I don't have time to explain. From across the text, you would find this disgust towards femininity, this bafflement, confusion regarding women's sexual desire, particularly the mother's sexual desire, is what bothers Hamlet throughout the play. So the argument I'm trying to make is this, that Hamlet is a tragedy of desire because Hamlet's suffering derives from his inability to cope with the mother's sexual appetite, mother's sexual desire. It is the feminine desire, the feminine sexuality that ruptures the masculine mythological phallic universe of patriarchy, particularly the universe of Hamlet. Hamlet is uncertain. Hamlet is unable to cope with this overwhelming desire of the mother. And this is what paralyzes him. For Hamlet, the murder of the father becomes secondary. The desire of the mother becomes primary. That's what bothers him throughout the play. And this is, secondly, so this is, as I said, this is the desire is the desire of the mother. This is the first implication of the desire. The second is the desire for an impossible object. Which is to say, if we try and understand Hamlet's relation with Ophelia and Hamlet's desire for Ophelia, then you will understand that this is also a source of tragedy for Hamlet. Desire for Ophelia is also a source of tragedy for Hamlet. To begin with, Hamlet's problem is that Hamlet cannot accept another woman. Hamlet has developed his disgust for women because of his mother. So he thinks that women, mind you, he says, frailty, thy name is woman. What does it mean? Woman with uppercase W, all women, so to say. What does it mean? Hamlet comes to this equation, if you like, this formula. What is the formula of femininity that Hamlet comes up with? It is this, that Gertrude, or my mother, has been frail. She betrayed my father. She didn't manifest chastity. She cheated, and she goes wherever sexual satisfaction is available, and so on and so forth. That's Hamlet's misogynistic interpretation. That's what bothers Hamlet. So for Hamlet, the formula of womanhood or femininity is like this: my mother, or Gertrude, is frail. Or in other words, frailty, thy name is Gertrude. What Hamlet tried to say, frailty, thy name is Gertrude. But he ended up saying frailty, thy name is woman. That's tricky. Because thereby Hamlet would judge all women, including Ophelia, in terms of his mother. So, frailty, thy name is Gertrude. Therefore, frailty, thy name is woman. Therefore, frailty, thy name is Ophelia. And this is the reason, this understanding or misunderstanding of about the mother that Hamlet has is what causes Hamlet's constant manifestation, expression of disgust towards Ophelia. If you read the interactions between Hamlet and Ophelia throughout the play, you would find there are four, at least three, but more than three, 4 points. Apparently, at one point, Hamlet sent love letters to Ophelia. It means that Hamlet loved Ophelia. That could be the first point. The second point would be the estrangement with Ophelia. Meaning, after Hamlet discovered that women are like this is the embodiment of the entire femininity, women must be like this, therefore Ophelia would also betray me. If I am in love with Ophelia, if I marry Ophelia, etc., Ophelia wouldn't think twice to go to another man for the fulfillment of sexual appetite, therefore sexual desire, and so on. Therefore, Hamlet thinks that Ophelia would be like my mother as well. So this is the second point. Hamlet's reading of Ophelia, Hamlet's approach to Ophelia, as influenced by his reading of Gertrude, who could be described as the estrangement with Ophelia. Second stage, where Hamlet is disillusioned with femininity, therefore disillusioned with Ophelia. And there, at one particular passage, I don't have time to explain, Hamlet goes and meets Ophelia in her closet, stares at her face, takes her hand and tries to stare at it, and so on and so forth, and then tells her to forget about him, etc., etc. And the entire time, like, he doesn't speak much. And this is what, of course, is the manifestation of madness according to Polonius. And Hamlet is in love with Ophelia, but that's a different issue. What I'm saying is this: that at that particular point in Hamlet's interaction with Ophelia, Ophelia finds that Hamlet probably loved her earlier, but at this point he's like disabled here and totally like distraught and so on and so forth. So he is disillusioned with Ophelia. The third stage in Hamlet-Ophelia relationship is what is known as phallicization of Ophelia. Ophelia is phallicized. Phallus can be understood on multiple levels, but in this context, I don't have time to explain all the implications, but one would be phallus as the embodiment uh, uh, of birth and reproduction. So for Hamlet at one point during the, I think, the mousetrap scene perhaps, when Hamlet talks to interacts with Ophelia, says a lot of things. At that point of time, Hamlet tells Ophelia, and if you remember this, very interesting, he asks Ophelia to forget about him, and he asks her, "Go thee to nunnery." Go thee to nunnery, it basically means you should go to the nunnery. You should be with the monks. Because if you're living in this world as a woman outside this convent setup, you would be tempted in terms of your sexual desire to engage into multiple promiscuous relationships, and that would be the ruin to all. So you destroy people, your feminine sexual desire would destroy men, and so on and so forth. So Hamlet wants Gertrude to go to the nunnery so that sexual desire of the woman can be contained. But interestingly, many critics, including Lacan, have pointed out that nunnery is also an euphemism in this context of the word brothel. So brothel in Elizabethan England also was euphemistically called nunnery. So when Hamlet says, "Go thee to nunnery," it could also be read as, "Go thee to brothel." So you want to have sex, like all women, like my mother, who has tremendous sexual appetite. Why are you living in the society? Go to the brothel, you would have many men coming to your life and you would be having sex. This is phallicization. But he also says, either go to nunnery to contain your sexual desire, or go to brothel and have it fulfilled as much as you want. But he also says that, but don't stay within society, because to live within the social framework is to give birth to children. Women are the breeders, Hamlet says. And as you understand, Hamlet's misogyny is so much prominent across these passages. Hamlet says women are breeders, baby producing machines, as it were. But he says, breeders of sinners. He says that I wish, he tells Ophelia, I wish my mother didn't give birth to me. He says, to be born is to suffer. We all are sinners, we all are committing crimes. What is the use of being born? Look at my father, who loved my mother, but was betrayed by my uncle and probably by my mother. Look at the entire world. It is better, it would have been better not to be born. Birth is the biggest tragedy in life. So Hamlet says, do not engage, do not remain within a societal framework to get married to somebody, give birth to children, because giving birth is to be stopped, because after all, it would reproduce suffering, cycles of suffering. And secondly, I know what women want, they want sex, so please go to the brothel. Or if you want to contain your sexual desire, go to nunnery. Extremely problematic, extremely misogynistic conversation that Hamlet has with Ophelia. This is what is known as phallicization of Ophelia, turning Ophelia into not only a sexual object, but also sexual subject, a subject who wants to get her sexual desire fulfilled by hook or by crook. This tremendous amount of sexual appetite, according to Hamlet, is what defines women at this particular point. However, the fourth stage in Hamlet's relation with Ophelia is known as reintegration. So what happens, if you remember the famous gravedigger scene, where Hamlet, is in disguise in the churchyard. The long story, I'm not getting into it. He's in disguise in the churchyard. The dead body of Ophelia, who has committed suicide, drowned herself in the river, she is brought for burial. The gravediggers say that she cannot have Christian burials because she has committed suicide. As you understand, Hamlet also says it is against divine law. Self-slaughter is against divine law. Therefore, Ophelia cannot be offered a normal kind of a burial, Christian burial. So, and all these discussions are happening. So Laertes, Ophelia's brother, is very angry with this. He wants her brother to get a Christian burial. So he jumps into the grave where the dead body has been kept and expresses his anger. Hamlet, who was in disguise around that place, didn't know up to now that it was Ophelia's dead body. He didn't know that Ophelia has committed suicide. The moment he finds that Laertes is inside the grave and is angry, etc., etc., Hamlet also gets into the grave and starts fighting with Laertes, starts competing with Laertes in terms of saying, I loved Ophelia, famous passage from that interaction in the grave digger scene. Hamlet says, I loved Ophelia, and 40,000 brothers with all their love couldn't equal my sum. I will give you the exact quotation. I have it. I hate to misquote Shakespeare. So what actually Hamlet says, just a second. But in the meantime, am I making sense? Are you like,
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So what Hamlet actually says here, this is very difficult to find it at this point of time.
Mahitosh, may I?
Yeah.
I loved Ophelia, 40,000 brothers. If you added all their love together, couldn't match mine.
Right.
What are you going to do for
her? Yeah. So that's very interesting here. You have so actually I had it in front of me. So in another version, as you know, Hamlet has various textual versions. One is the Arden version, which is I think based on the folio or quarto 2, I forget. It says, I loved Ophelia, 40,000 brothers could not with all their quantity of love make up my sum. I loved Ophelia, 40,000 brothers could not with all their quantity of love make up my sum. This is very interesting, and thank you, Priyanka, for that intervention. It is very interesting, as you see, I loved Ophelia, 40,000 brothers couldn't. So what is this? The question is, what is Hamlet saying here? He has systematically alienated Ophelia. He was disgusted with femininity, therefore with Ophelia. He phallicized Ophelia. He estranged Ophelia. And now, after Ophelia is dead, in the graveyard, finding her brother shouting that she cares so much for her sister, suddenly Hamlet claims that he loved Ophelia more than Laertes, more than her brother. 40,000 brothers with all their love could not or cannot equal my love for Ophelia. What is this? What is this nonsense, if you allow me to put it like that? If you really loved Ophelia, why did you let Ophelia get estranged? Why did you condemn Ophelia like this throughout the text? This is very interestingly, this is called reintegration. Reintegration with Ophelia. It basically means for Hamlet, the object becomes understandable only when the object is inaccessible. So Hamlet can at last articulate his desire for Ophelia once Ophelia is not available. As I said, desire is desire for the impossible. So here, Hamlet can love Ophelia when Ophelia is no longer there. As Rabbi Zizek, following Lacan, said, the only good omen is the dead omen. For patriarchy to function, women should not be able to speak. The dead omen, the dead Ophelia, cannot come there and point out that Hamlet has psychologically tortured her. Therefore, the point here I'm trying to make is this, that Hamlet has a kind of reintegration with Ophelia, not when Ophelia is alive, but after Ophelia is dead. So therefore, Hamlet's tragedy is a tragedy of desire because it involves this tragic reintegration with Ophelia after the death of Ophelia. It's a reunion, but it's not a true, fulfilling reunion. Right. The third and fourth, give me 5 minutes, Jyotirmoy, I just need to get it done.
Yes, sir. Definitely.
Okay. Sorry, I'm speaking too much. So the relation with Laertes, we can take it from here. The third dimension, as I said, desire is the desire of the other. As you understand here that at this point, Hamlet tells Laertes that I love Ophelia more than you have loved Ophelia. This is the point when Hamlet realizes that Laertes is in a similar situation like me. But Laertes is a better subject. Is a better mirror image. In a mirror image, the child finds the image in the mirror and finds that the image is better than me. So he emulates the image. The aggression, so first there is an aggression towards the image. Here, you have first Hamlet is angry with Laertes. How dare you say that you love Ophelia so much? If anybody can claim to have loved Ophelia, it is me, Hamlet. This is first thing. The second point is this: Hamlet realizes that somewhere deep down from that point on, that Laertes is a better individual, better avenger, if you like, than me. Why? Because Laertes is ready to avenge the death of Polonius and the death of Ophelia. As you know, Polonius was killed by Hamlet, and Ophelia committed suicide. We can say that she was in love, and of course, the psychological pressures from her father, from her brother, from Hamlet, from three men. So three men together could be held responsible for the murder of Hamlet, of Ophelia. What I'm saying is this: therefore, at this point, what Hamlet does, the Hamlet tries to emulate. Hamlet is inspired by Laertes' desire for revenge. Laertes wants to kill Hamlet because he considers Hamlet singularly responsible for the murder of Polonius and the suicide of Ophelia. And Laertes is this masculine, heroic, active individual who is out there ready to take revenge. And Hamlet realizes he is nowhere like Laertes. That I am also supposed to take revenge. I also love Ophelia, but have I really expressed my desires? Have I really acted on my desires? So what happens at this crucial point is this: Hamlet emulates Laertes' desire to take revenge. It is Laertes, this ideal image, this ideal ego, that the other, that inspires the desire to take revenge. Up to now, if you like, Hamlet has the desire to revenge, but not that prominent. To take revenge, but not that prominent. It is the desire of the other to take revenge that inspires Hamlet to take revenge as well. So as I said, the desire is the desire of the other. It basically means the other desires that, therefore I will desire that. Laertes desires revenge, therefore I would desire revenge as well. And of course, the rest is history. I know Hamlet goes on, and of course, he has to fight the other, and so on. I won't get into the further discussions. That the idea is that you should always kill your rival in order to claim yourself to be better. So Hamlet realizes Laertes is better than him. The only way Hamlet can be better than Laertes is by killing him. You must murder the rival. You must demolish the rival in order to be the best. And Hamlet gets into the fight, and as you know, in the last act, eventually during the fencing match, the sword used by Laertes is of course kind of poisoned, and he wounds Hamlet. Then of course Claudius poisons the drink which was supposed to be served to Hamlet, but Gertrude drinks the poison, and then Hamlet, mortally wounded, goes and kills Claudius, and everybody dies at the end of the play, as it happens in a typical tragedy in the Elizabethan context. So what I'm saying is that, but this entire event of fencing match and the eventual revenge of killing Claudius, etc., is inspired by Hamlet's emulation of Laertes' desire for revenge. So on these three levels, therefore, I conclude my discussion here. I could have said many other things, but time is short. I conclude by saying that Hamlet is a tragedy of desire because Hamlet's suffering, Hamlet's actions, Hamlet's thoughts, Hamlet's reflections are caused by desire understood at three levels: the desire of Gertrude, the desire for Ophelia, and the emulation of desire of Laertes. Let me conclude with another point. I'm very sorry, 2 minutes.
No, sir, it's absolutely okay.
Which is that it is, and this would be the, if you like, the takeaway from today's lecture. Hamlet, that usually Hamlet is understood to be an obsessional neurotic. In clinical terms, Hamlet is understood to be an obsessional neurotic. An obsessional neurotic is somebody who has this constant question: to be or not to be. That is the question, of course. So many of us who are neurotic, so Lacan defines human beings into three categories: psychotic, neurotic, pervert. I won't talk about pervert. Psychotic are people who are mad, basically madmen. No. But madmen have a problematic use of language. How do you know someone is mad? When you know that that person is speaking incoherent language. Incoherent language is what makes a discourse of madness the discourse of madness. Of course, Polonius thinks that Hamlet is psychotic. But as you know, Hamlet was not mad. He was pretending to be mad. As Polonius himself, Polonius is the bad psychoanalyst in the play. Okay, Polonius repeatedly thinks that Hamlet is mad because he is in love with my daughter. And of course, the entire thesis is proven wrong. Totally wrong anyway. Love and madness are close, so never mind. But Polonius himself admits that Hamlet, though he be mad, there's a method in it, Polonius says. There is a method in Hamlet's madness. Hamlet is pretending to be mad. There is the appearance, but the reality of an extremely rational and intelligent individual. So Hamlet is not mad, not psychotic. He's not pervert. I don't have time to discuss that. But Hamlet could be neurotic. Now, neurotic is of three kinds. You could have, phobic neurotic, obsessional neurotic, and what do you say, a hysteric neurotic. Now, it is possible because we can't psychoanalyze Hamlet. He cannot come here on our couch. He's a fictional character. But looking at the text, it appears to me that Hamlet is either to be understood as obsessional neurotic, because an obsessional neurotic is understood in terms of a question: to be or not to be? Do I live or do I die? Do I exist or do I not exist? Do I commit suicide or do I live life to the extreme? This is a typical question. If this question bothers you all the time, you must understand, you must know you are an obsessional neurotic. Okay. But a hysteric, another category of neurosis, a hysteric is somebody who has a different question. The question is, am I a man or am I a woman? Where am I a man and where am I a woman? How do I define femininity? How do I define masculinity? If we would be a hysteric, if these questions bother you, these questions structure your subjectivity. Now, typically, Hamlet has been knowingly, unknowingly read as an obsessional neurotic based on the to be or not to be speech from Act. But I claim Hamlet should be read as a history, because Hamlet's question is more related to the question of masculinity and femininity. Am I a man or am I a woman? Than being related to the question of existence. Of course, existence, the question of existence is there, but he is primarily concerned with the question of femininity and masculinity. As I demonstrated, hopefully you understood, I made sense, I hope, that Hamlet is disgusted with femininity. Hamlet is at a loss about feminine desire. Hamlet is unable to understand, what does the woman want? What does my mother want? Will Ophelia want what my mother wants? Then it would be devastating for him. So this question of femininity, feminine sexual desire, feminine sexual appetite, etc. is there. Feminine subjectivity is there. But once again, there is also this question of failure of masculinity throughout the play. Claudius is described at one point by Hamlet as a thing of nothing. Thing of nothing. So Claudius is a thing of nothing, the empty subject. A senior Hamlet is repeatedly described as a king made of shreds and patches. Also somebody who could not earn the love of Gertrude. Somebody who failed as a king, therefore was betrayed by his subjects. So failure of kingship, failure of masculinity. Polonius, another man in the play, is also failure. He comes up with false analysis of Hamlet's, false diagnosis of Hamlet's problem. Hamlet himself is a failure throughout the play, because he is unable to bring himself to act properly, and also to decide, and also to get outside, get away from this cycle of feminine desire. So what we have in the play is a total dissolution, total, if you like, annihilation, total breakdown, total confusion of masculinity, which happens, one could say, at the cost of this foregrounding by Hamlet, not by Gertrude, not by Ophelia, but by Hamlet, this notion of feminine sexual desire. And of course, when we understand this, we are saying that my entire reading is from a reading to understand Hamlet and not to understand Ophelia and Gertrude, because I don't have time to do that. If you read the text from the perspective of Ophelia and Gertrude, your findings would be different. So to conclude, if we read Hamlet as a revenge tragedy, we would end up defining Hamlet as an obsessional neurotic with the question of existence. But if we talk about Hamlet as a tragedy of desire, then we would primarily talk about him as a hysteric, concerned with the question of masculinity and femininity. Thank you very much for your patience. I always talk for a long time. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, sir.
Uh,
Thank you.
Jyotirma, may I say something after your?
Yes, please.
Thank
Please, madam, you just said you want to say something, please say.
It was very interesting to listen to Mahitosh, because I think it was wonderful to listen to Professor Mandal. And may I say, or may I, am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
don't know.
Yes, ma'am. You're perfectly
Yes,
audible.
Dr. Mandal, I would like to say that your wonderful speech, you've spoken wonderfully, simply a brilliant speech, brilliant lecture. I'm actually forced to say that I was once very inspired because the thoughts often come like Ebong Mushaira published a volume on Hamlet, and I was very happy to read an article by poet Ronajit Dash, where he said Eliot Hamletকে দেখতে চেয়েছিলেন তুলো পণ্ডিতের ফাটা চশমা পরে. Because to make it simple, if we consider it from the very you can say a patriarchal point of view or a very Indianized point of view, it's very difficult for a 30-year-old son or even a daughter to see his mother getting remarried just after, even after 3 months or 3 years after his or her father's death. So do we really have to say that Hamlet is obsessed? If we take it very simply, is it the time has changed now, but in spite of that, is it possible for a 30-year-old son to see his mother marrying his or her uncle? So how far this theory of obsession is a compulsory? That is my question to you.
Okay, good question. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so yeah, no, I don't think obsession would be the right way to describe it. But what I was trying to say is this sense of being paralyzed. Hamlet is paralyzed in terms of the kind of enactment of desire that he experiences vis-a-vis his mother. So his paralysis, his suffering, if you like, even his disgust for femininity, his entire worldview regarding women is determined by his mother. And particularly this over hasty remarriage of his mother, this sexual appetite of the mother. So what I'm trying to say is that it might not be an obsession, but it might be a determining factor for Hamlet, and that's what paralyzes him. And his entire perspective on women, as we can see from the text, if you read it closely, changes because of his mother. So his mother has a determining impact. The desire of the mother, to be more precise, has desire, of course, your sexual desire, etc. And of course, as I said, this is Hamlet's interpretation. And so this is not your interpretation. We don't agree. I'm sure we don't agree with Hamlet on many levels. But what I'm saying is that, and once again, whether Hamlet was 30-year-old is also debatable. Critics have said that Hamlet could be somewhere between 18 to 30. And also actors who played, as you know, Hamlet, they have ranged, across the ages. Somebody with 70 I think 70-year-old actor also performed Hamlet. But the point, therefore, insofar as the textual evidence is concerned, we can say that Hamlet is somewhere, because there is a quarter 1, quarter 2 folio, etc. Different drafts taken into consideration. He could be somewhere between 18 years and 34 years, somewhere in between. So we can say that it might vary depending on the exact age of Hamlet.
In spite of the age. in
Yeah,
spite of the age.
yeah, yeah,
Don't you think that it's every man's obsession, and it's part of instead of being Hamlet's obsession only?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, of course. I mean, of course, what Lacan does
I
in
mean,
course of the play,
yeah,
in course of his reading of Hamlet, is to show
yeah.
that Hamlet is the modern subject,
Madman.
modern man.
Thank you.
So of course, yeah,
Thank
that
you
is
for
there.
the answer.
Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, madam, for such an interesting question. Thank you, madam, for your observation, and thank you, sir, for answering the question also.
Yeah,
And we have a few questions in the chat box already. Would you attend them, sir?
yeah, sure, sure.
Hello, sir. Okay. So I can see the first question is uh, okay. Uh, what is the difference? Uh, okay, just let me find.
আমি দেখবো? Sorry.
Ha ha ha.
You can read out. That would be good. I haven't
Yes,
heard you for a long time. Yeah.
there are there are too many comments in the chat box, so that's why it's hard to find the questions. Sir, then can it be said that Ophelia could only exist as a specter in the symbolic? Shall I repeat it?
Wait, I'll find it.
Okay.
Thank you, Priyanka, once again for this, for putting it in the chat box. Okay.
You're welcome. This is Ranjana's question, I think, that Jyotirmoy is mentioning.
Ranjana, okay, just
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
Ranjana Sarkar.
Sir, then can it be said that Ophelia could only exist as a specter in the symbolic? That's a difficult question, Ranjana. What is specter in the symbolic?
So, as you know, like we were reading one paper by, a paper by Mulvey, Laura Mulvey. She was talking about how the woman can only exist as a lack in Lacanian sense. So, so as you were mentioning that after the death of Ophelia, Hamlet is like, oh, I loved her so much. Even 40,000 Laertiuses cannot ever love her the way I love her right now, and that happens only after she dies. After Hamlet comes to know that she's dead, she's no longer there for him to, you know, for him to love her, basically because she becomes the desire once again because she's no longer there. So does that really, can it be said that she can only exist, Ophelia can only exist as a specter, a ghost in the symbolic, because she exists in the mirror stage, she exists in the
Not in the
imaginary.
mirror stage. Good question. Not in the mirror stage. I just wanted to double check whether whatever you've asked is something that you asked with with full knowledge. Never mind. So, what my answer would be that yeah, I mean, Ophelia can exist only as a figment or as an image in Hamlet's fantasy. That's the only way. I mean, the object of desire exists, object of love exists.
So she's a
basically
phantasm, like a
yeah, it
ghost.
could be. Yeah, yeah. With a pun on the word phantasm, fantasy, phantasm.
Yes.
Yeah, it's totally possible to read it like that. Love is basically in the domain of the imaginary. So the question should have, like, it is more important to locate Ophelia in the domain of the imaginary as an image created by Hamlet within his fantasy world. Yeah. Thank you, Ranjan.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ranjana Sarkar, madam, for your question. I can see another question by Tonushree. Sir, what's the difference between desire and eat?
Oh, that's a good question, but not very sure. Okay, so the desire is different. I mean, id is it is a Freudian term. Desire is a term that has been mainly comprehensively theorized by Lacan. Freud usually used the word wish, death wish, for example. He uses desire definitely, but if you have read Interpretation of Dreams, you would know he calls defines dream as a wish fulfillment, wish. So desire is a term that is basically ascribed to Lacan, who theorized it to a great extent. Now the difference between desire and and id is related to, if you like, id is biological. It's more of an instinct, if you like, biological, more of a biological experience. But desire is linguistic. Desire is
Sorry,
oh,
sir.
sorry. Desire is linguistic, meaning desire exists somewhere. Let me give you examples. You could think about three terms here.
Excuse me, sir. Aboda, can you just mute Sobhik Das? Or Aratrikati, can you just mute Sobhik Das?
Sure.
Okay. So the point is that there is a difference between need, demand, and desire. If you know the difference, you would get the point. Need is biological. You know, need for sexual satisfaction, need for food. This is biological. This is related to id, if you like. Demand is articulation of need in language. So you tell your mom, give me food, I'm hungry. So food would satisfy your need, but satisfaction of the need is dependent upon the articulation of need through language. Like sentences that you utter. Desire, on the other hand, is this surplus, this excess between the biological need and the demand. This is excess. It is neither demand nor need, but something that is extra, that cannot be fulfilled. It doesn't have any corresponding object. So desire, id does have an object directly that can probably fulfill the id, but desire cannot be fulfilled. This is the fundamental theoretical difference. I can explain it further, but forget it. That's the fundamental difference. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, sir. So there is one question by Arunna Bhattacharya. Sir, is there any similarity between the relationship of Hamlet and his mother Gertrude in Hamlet and the relationship of Paul Morel and his mother Gertrude Morel in Lawrence's Sons and Lovers in terms of Oedipus complex?
A very good question and obvious question. Sons and Lovers is a very interesting example. Your question is there a similarity? My answer is yes. Now, if you want to read further about it, you can read this brilliant book entitled Devouring Mother, which is a Jungian reading of Freud, a little bit of Freud, but more of Jungian reading of Lawrence's text, particularly Sons and Lovers, where the relation between mother and the sons are, this relationship is explained in detail. Answer is yes. Additional reference, you read The Devouring Mother, the book. It's a very good book. I read it long back in 1955 when I visited the National Library. The book is available in the National Library. If things get back to normalcy, you can go to the library and read this brilliant book, Devouring Mother. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. There is one question by Disha Chakraborty. Is one of his the psychology of love lectures, Freud said that a man's inability to love lies at not being able to correlate the pristine. Just a minute, sir. Sorry. Let me ask this question once again. In one of his psychology of love lectures, Freud said that a man's inability to love lies at not being able to correlate the pristine image of his mother with that of the best or the harlot. So, would you say that it's the same case with Hamlet, who falls to transcend from the imaginary to the symbolic? You can see the question in the chat box also.
Yeah. No, I heard you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, yes, it is possible to, with reference to Freud, because there is a very commonplace and therefore misleading Freudian formula that women look for their mothers, look for their fathers in their husbands, in their partners, in a very heteronormative way. Women look for their fathers in their partners, husbands, and men look for their mothers in the wife, in the female partner. A very commonplace, misleading, fallacious Freudian formulation, not Freud's formula, but Freudian formulation. So yeah, I mean, it is possible. I mean, but the more interesting, complex part here is that when you move to Lacan and when you move to advanced psychoanalysis, advanced clinical findings, you would realize that it is the case with everybody, irrespective of gender. Everybody, insofar as the choice of love object is concerned, whether it's a man or a woman, is directly or indirectly influenced by the impact, the Oedipal impact of the mother's desire on the child. So in the Lacanian context, the Oedipal desire of the mother, the impact of the mother's desire on the child, is not related to only the male child. It is both the children. I mean, all genders. It is more complex than that. But the answer is yes. It is possible to look at it like that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your answers. Thank you for kindly consenting to attend this webinar and special lecture series. That's our esteemed resource person. Now we are extremely grateful to you, sir. Now the last segment, vote of thanks. First of all, I'd like to thank.
Just a second, does like.
Okay, there is another question.
Priyanka, any question?
Yes.
No, thank you. That was
okay,
wonderful.
thank you. Yeah.
You can ask, madam.
No, Jyotirma, thank you so much. Bye.
Okay.
So I would like to thank our principal, sir, for encouraging us to conduct such a webinar and special lecture series. I would thank coordinator, madam, Dr. Anuradha Kunda, who actually teaches Hamlet in postgraduate section.
Oh, wow, great.
And
yes,
she asked you the question.
Yeah, so thank you, Anuradha, and I hope I didn't say things that were not logical, etc. So thank you. Yeah, please.
Okay, so I would thank my colleagues as well, and I must mention the contribution of from our department to present way. And I sincerely thank Somnath Dotto and Viprati Mondal for the technical assistance and making arrangements to stream this lecture live on YouTube as well. Once again, thank you, sir. Thank you for kindly consenting to speak here. And thank you for sharing your knowledge and time with us. And I would thank the participants and all the audience members for taking interest in this special lecture. So thank you once again. The session ends here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so
sir.
much. Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. The session ends here. Thank you. সোমনাথ দা, এটা অফ করে দিও লাইভ স্ট্রিমিংটা।